What's up, guys? This is Jan for Chess24, and it is round number 4 in Wijk aan Zee, where, as game of the day, I had to go with a clash between the local hero, the tournament leader or co-leader Anish Giri, together with Vichy Anand on 2.5 out of 3, and the world champion Magnus Carlsen, who is on 2 out of 3, half point behind Anish. The two have played each other plenty over the last couple years. Their score is now, I believe, 50%. Anish won the first game ever, but recently lost one. Not an easy opponent for Magnus. Historically, Anish Giri, of course, always tremendously well prepared. And the opening phase between those two deserves special attention. So let's jump right into it. Anish Giri goes for 1 e4. And Carlsen, spoiler alert, what's his arrow doing? Goes for e6, not a move he typically chooses. His main weapon, of course, is the move e5. Giri later said anything but e5 would come as a surprise, but he had that thought the night before the game that e6, followed by the line that Carlsen goes to choose, would be a logical choice against him. So, not a complete surprise for Anish Giri. However, his clairvoyant abilities would let him down a couple moves later. We'll get to that point. So far, the French by Magnus Carlsen, e4, e6, d4, d5. Giri plays a main move, knight to c3, which looks very logical. The knight is developed towards the center. Allows itself to get pinned, which is why some cautious natures prefer knight d2. But knight c3 has always been the main theoretical battleground. Bishop to b4, the so-called Wiener, excellent pronunciation, Wiener by Magnus Carlsen, the sharpest move available in this position. And black has nothing, white has nothing better, even though they've tried plenty, than going for e5 with this traditional French structure. Black plays the move knight to e7, which, according to Giri, is not what he's expected. He thought Magnus might go for this line. I'm not sure why he was willing to share that information, but we all know Anish is very cunning, so this might have been like a double bluff, because he said he thought this would happen, and then he would be able to bang out 30 moves, because he had excellent preparation for it. So either he's trying to scare people away from playing that against him, or he's trying to make people think that he's afraid of that line. I'm not sure. However, that line did not happen, because Magnus Carlsen goes for the very main line in this position. Of course, c5 as mainline-ish, as knight to e7, but the position that we're about to get is the very main line. Knight e7, a3, takes, and c5. And already, by the positional features, we can tell that stakes are pretty high. Black has given up. His good dark squared bishop has managed to cripple white's queenside quite a bit in return for the bishop's life, but has to keep an eye on his own kingside, because after queen g4, the main move, that kingside is under assault directly. The thing here is that if the French comes as a surprise, or half as a surprise, as it does in this game, in order to play queen g4 with white, you either need to be very, very confident or know a lot of theory, because the lines are incredibly sharp, and black is quite a wide choice here. King f8 is a move. Short castle is certainly a move. Knight f5 I've seen people play. And then there are the crazy lines that we're about to see in the game that start with either c takes d4 or queen to c7. That often transpose into each other, where black is willing to give up his pawns on g7 and h7, but tries to undermine the white structure in the center and on the queen side. So cd4 and queen c7 often lead to the same position, but there is a small difference after queen to c7. How do I explain this? Let's start with what they did in the game. In the game, c takes d4 was played. When c takes d4 is a mistake, because now queen c7 is very strong already, threatening queen c3 check and keeping an eye on the c2 pawn. So after c takes d4, white goes queen g7, rook g8, queen takes h7, queen to c7, and we've reached this tabia that you can also reach via the other move order, starting with queen to c7. I believe it doesn't matter much, but queen to c7 first gives white the extra option of playing bishop to d3, c takes d4, and knight to e2. Developing this bishop first and then the knight, and only taking g7 later if there is an opportune moment. I'm not sure if this line is great for white. I lack expertise here, but I believe that's an option that you want to eliminate by starting with this c takes d4. I'm sure that detour was very relevant for all of you viewers. So queen g7, rook g8, queen h7, queen c7, and knight to e2. Now we can see this bishop has to stay on f1 for the time being. Knight e2 pretty much the only move seen nowadays. Some very brave people once in a while play the move king to d1 here. But I do not think Anish will join their ranks anytime soon. King d1 players, not brave people. So knight e2 and knight b to c6. Generally black, I can't even count, he's currently pawn down. Black tends to be pawn down in these lines, but he wants to compensate for it by developing very rapidly and then trying to start an attack, or at least counterplay against the white king that does not have an obvious hiding spot. Queen side isn't safe, king side isn't safe, so often it just stays in the center. And white tries to stabilize, goes f4, tries to bring the queen back, then maybe runs with the h-pawn. That's my understanding of the Wiener. However, what I do understand is that after knight bc6, we can't take on d4 because of a theme we've already seen. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and queen c3 check. No good, so white instead plays the move f4, d takes c3, and here the first small surprise for me, or the small deviation from the absolute main line, which in this position, as far as I know, is the move queen to d3. Still keeping options open how white wants to recapture on c3, or if he wants to capture at all, or if he just wants to bring the queen home, start pushing the h-pawn. Recent theoretical debates in this position have been centered around d4. Knight takes, queen takes, bishop d7. Very weird position. And I once did a bit of work on this after rook g1. Black had to be quite precise to stay in the game, but it seems like he is a favorite to hold his ground here. An alternative is to just push the h-pawn, h4, followed by h5, h6. It has been played by very respectable players such as Peter Leko. So this is a serious plan as well. But Anish plays a move that is a bit of a sideline, but if you see this position for the first time, is the most natural move of all of them. Knight takes c3, isn't it? We take the pawn and we're threatening knight b5 followed by knight to t6. What could be more logical? The reason, I guess, why this is a bit of a sideline, even though this might change, and if Anish Giri chooses this move, I don't think it's for practical reasons. I think it's because he believes it is the best move. The reason this move is considered a bit of a sideline is the black reply knight to d4. Controlling the b5 square and immediately targeting the knight on c3, which of course would not have been possible had white started with queen to d3. Knight takes c3, knight to d4, and now white shows that his plan is to bring his king to the queen side in this particular position. He wants to go bishop b2, followed by long castles. There are alternatives. You could, once again, try to bring the queen back to d3. But then it looks like black coordinates his pieces quite easily. Knight ef5 helps this guy. Bishop d7, rook c8 is coming very, very quickly. After bishop d2, maybe intending to castle. This move, free novelty in this video. Queen c5 novelty, stopping long castles because of queen takes a3 check. Looks annoying, so I don't like this queen d3 move in this position all that much. Bishop b2, played by Giri. Carlsen has no time to waste to conclude his development. Goes bishop d7, long castles, attacks the knight, and queen to b6. Both sides still in book here. Giri later mentioned that he did know theory until here and quite a bit further that he remembered a lot. Carlsen was also making his moves more or less instantly. Queen to b6, defending the knight on d4. The alternative knight df5 does stop the queen from coming back, but it does allow the move knight to b5 and bishop b5, king f8. Seems a little excessive even for Magnus Carlsen standards, because the black king is bad, white has 2 bishops, even though the white king is also not great and the bishops aren't that active. It's hard to believe that this position is fully sound for black. So queen to b6, and this is yet another crossroads for us spacebar junkies out there. Because the computer gives us 2 options, queen to d3, which was played in the game, and the very exciting move, knight takes d5. Just, trying to win another pawn. You want to take the knight. Knight takes d5, not a great idea, because of queen g8. E d5, bishop d4 is also good for white. So black has to embark on a little, what do you call this? Desperado kamikaze mission with knight to b3. The knight gives its life, but it tries to open the c file first, because after c takes b3, e takes d5, even though white is 2 pawns up and sort of winning positionally, the threats of bishop f5 followed by rook c8, with queen takes b3 maybe in the mix, are very, very serious. This position is fun to analyze a little further. I clicked a bit here, something like bishop d3, rook g2, queen h8, rook g8, queen f6. Don't ask me why, but those are computer moves. Rook c8, king b1, rook c6. It does seem like white might have some chances for an advantage here. We have to give a lot of pawns back to bring our queen back into the game. e6, rook e6, queen to d4. But it seems like white could be a little better even here. So another very interesting option where black has to know exactly what he's doing. That is the problem with these very sharp lines. Sometimes white has multiple options and black has to find only moves against all of those to just stay in the game. Not even equalize, just stay in the game. Giri does not go for knight takes d5. Instead, he brings the queen back. Queen d3 attacks the knight. And the knight decides to leave his post with knight d to f5. Knight e f5 might look more logical, but after this, knight takes d5 gains in strength. Not going to be able to do it. Therefore, knight d f5, this knight has his sights on another nice square, on e3. Black also wants to go rook c8, and then maybe knight e3, combined with d4. Continue drumming up counterplay. It's easy to lose count of the pawns here. Normally white is a pawn up in these positions, which might not be a big factor right now, but if white manages to weather the first wave, to weather the storm, it might be a factor later. Anish anticipates the move. Knight to e3 coming, hitting the rook, and therefore he goes for rook to d2, stepping out of this potential. Attack. Rook c8. It's more important to activate this rook than trying to bring the king into safety by long castles. So rook to c8. Even though Carlsen started taking a little time here, it's very, very likely he was still in his opening preparation. And Giri also claimed later, he said that around here he wasn't sure about the details, but he did manage to remember a lot. He played g3, which makes a lot of sense. You want to develop this bishop anywhere, and you don't want to deal with rook takes g2. And after g3, the black knight does jump to e3, threatening knight to c4, continuing his wonderful journey. In this position, Giri plays a very spectacular move that, at first sight, seems to give him a serious advantage. But at second sight, after we managed to read out the computer evaluation, it looks like, after the move played in the game, knight to e4, black barely does manage to stay in the game. We'll look at it. Knight e4 looks tremendous, threatening a check on f6 or on d6. And d takes e4 does run into queen d7, king f8, queen d4 with a serious edge. So black only has one decent but sufficient way to stay in the game here. However, that way does exist, and therefore, I don't know, future theoreticians might want to study the move queen to d4, which according to my engine gives white a bit of a plus. I did a little clicking here, but could not quite equalize. White does still have his extra pawn after all. Potential lines are something like takes, bring the other knight, go back, maybe rook h8, threatening knight takes g3, but white is in time to more or less stabilize with rook g1, avoiding that threat. after something like takes, I don't know. Rook h3. Black has sort of compensation for the pawn. It's probably not in big trouble. But still, if you had to choose a side, you would probably choose this side. With the extra pawn, which is white. So I'm not sure if people will start going for this line or will investigate the earlier knight takes d5. Certainly some interesting options for the white side in these lines. Still, knight e4 played in the game, which looks tremendous, as mentioned. Am I overusing the word tremendous? I think some other people are guilty of that as well. Knight e4. Black only has one move to stay in the game. This rook has to be distracted. Rook takes c2. Rook takes c2 and d takes e4. Now queen takes d7 is no longer as strong as it was with the rook on d2. So white has to find a different way to play, and black does keep the option of gaining his exchange back, because currently he's an exchange down. He gave the rook on c2, but then took the knight on e4 with knight takes c2. Two sensible moves here. Queen takes e4, played in the game. The alternative, once again, is queen to d4. But it seems like this endgame does not really offer white any advantage. Material is equal, and this counterplay with rook h8, tending knight to f5, bishop to c6, and maybe pawn to e3, does seem strong enough to keep the balance at the very least. So queen d4. Not ideal. Instead, Giri plays queen takes e4, leaving black with a choice for a change. Earlier was white who always had the alternatives. Here black can try many a move. Knight 7 f5, for example, is indicated by the comp. Just, improving the position, keeping his options open, when to take on c2, when to go bishop to c6. I guess Carlsen, first of all, he was probably happy with the solution he chose. And secondly, I guess he didn't think he could ever be better in a position like this, where the computer says 0, 0, 0, but I test white. I think I'd take white here with the two bishops. So I'm not surprised the world champion did not go for this. White also had other options along the way. Here, for example, queen b4 leads to another crazy position. After takes, rook c8. And who's better and why? I do not know. So a lot of fun lines remaining behind the scenes, but Carlsen, in I believe his trademark style, has spotted a way to clarify the situation where he understands he can't really be worse because of the material remaining, and he finds a way to do exactly that. Knight takes c2, queen takes c2, bishop to c6, forcing the exchange of these bishops, because bishop g2 is the only move that does not lose massive amounts of material. Bishop takes g2, queen takes g2, and knight to d5. This is the position that I believe Carlsen went for. Sorry for all the arrows. Where black is still a pawn down, but he does have long-term compensation, because the white king is exposed, and the knight on d5 is tremendous. If black gets a little time here, he would like to go king d7, followed by rook c8 check. And the black initiative can very quickly grow into something serious. So caution is required. There's some funny looking computer lines here, like queen to c2 is a move given by the computer. King d7, queen a4 check. King e7, bishop to d4. But humans don't really play like this with the king in the center. And even if they did, I strongly doubt that white has an advantage in a position like this. Instead, Giri does take a sensible decision to eliminate his king from the danger zone before it gets too dangerous. Plays king to b1. At first sight, this blunders the f4 pawn, but at second sight, knight takes f4. It's well met by queen c2, threatening both gf4 and queen c8 check. White wins. Therefore, after king b1, Carlsen does well to sort of force the issue and organize direct counterplay that leads to an equal position. If he played king to d7, then white would be in time to play rook c1, challenge the c-file. And here, after let's say rook c8, without the rooks, I'm not so sure if black has enough compensation, because the h-pawn is quite a nuisance. Instead, as mentioned, there is a way to more or less end the game, and that way is played, instead of king to d7, knight c3 check. The king, of course, doesn't want to return to the c file, then I could just go back. So king to a1, and the black point is queen to b3, threatening checkmate on a2. That can only be parried sensibly by taking on c3. And here, very important, Zwischenzug that wins the pawn back. Queen takes a3 check, not queen c3, queen b2, where white is more or less winning. But queen a3, king to b1, queen takes c3. Now material is equal. White is in time to organize by playing rook to c1. But black is also in time to stop white from creating threats, because he has a lot of checks. Queen b4 check, queen to b2, queen e4 check played in the game. In case you're wondering why not go for this rook endgame, you probably can, but black can never ever be better in this endgame. These pawns aren't going anywhere against the white king. And it would be black that has to be a little cautious, even though a draw is a favorite here after king d7 or king d3. Random simple line. But yeah, it would be black that has to be careful. So no reason to go for this if you have a decent alternative. And queen e4 is a very decent alternative, because white doesn't really have anything better but repeating moves here with queen to c2. If you played king a2 instead, then black, now with this queen centralized and b7 covered, could just go for the quiet regrouping king f8, intending king to g7, followed by activating the rook via rook to d8, when only black can be better, so nothing white should go for either. Therefore, both sides can't really deviate advantageously from this move repetition, and that is what happens. So draw, big theoretical battle between Anish Giri and world champion Magnus Carlsen, who's done his homework. This line looked like more of a one-off. I doubt we will see a lot of French winners from Carlsen in the future, but he did get a draw with some very sharp preparation by Anish Giri. And of course there was a little banter on Twitter after the game where Anish brought up that very fact. Told Magnus, well, I guess you guys can read. I can read too. Poor Magnus Carlsen, so much hard memorization work only to make draw against me. Why? Hashtag Tata Steel Chess. And Carlsen says, I wanted to use a line in the world blitz, but thought it was too unsound. So, bit of a dig. D-I-G, just to make sure. And Anish takes it well, says Master of Comebacks. Champ. Anish Giri still in the shared lead, in good spirits in his home tournament in Wijk. Not exactly his home, but, you know, his country. While Magnus Carlsen remains half a point behind at the time of recording this, there's still some games going. Here we see Giri 3 out of 4, Vishianen 3 out of 4. Magnus Carlsen 2.5. Vladimir Kramnik could beat Peter Svidler 2.5. Shachmat Yarov also on 2.5. And those are all the 2.5 men. Thank you guys for watching this video. Sorry for my, what do you call this, nasally drone. I got a cold like in the last 2 hours. How quickly can I get a cold? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it anyway. See you next time.